Welcome to the first episode of the Fans Spit Wall, where the commentary comes from the comfort of my couch and your opinion won't be left in the gravel. Sorry, I had to say that. Right. So today we're diving headfirst into a topic that's been circling the motorsport world for decades, and I frankly think is very relevant to today's world. So we're talking females in motorsport, specifically in Formula One. In this episode, we'll also talk to an F1 Academy driver, so definitely stick around for that because it's going to be interesting. But before that, I want to, kickstart this topic by pointing out the obvious. Motorsport has been, like we all know, a male dominated field. It's men who invented the first racing car, and it was obvious that it was going to be men who race it, right? Nowadays, even with like the topics of diversity, trying to bring more inclusion into the sport, the teams, principals, the pit crews, engineers, and drivers, they're still mostly, if not only, men. So when we see a female engineer or a female backstage or a female on the grid, it's still the exception and not the norm. But today we're not focusing on the people backstage. We're gonna give them the flowers eventually. So, but today we're focusing on drivers. Speaking of drivers, here's the interesting thing. I'm gonna sit back. Um, we've seen women race in different series like NASCAR, W Series, Endurance Series, and since 2023 we have the F1 Academy. But when it comes to Formula One, which is the pinnacle of motorsport, it's been a while. And by a while, I mean well over 30 years. Like, to my surprise, when I did the research, the last time a female Formula One driver was on the grid was in 1992. I read about Maria Teresa de Filippis, who was the first woman to ever race in a Formula One Grand Prix, and Lella Lombardi, who was the only woman to score points in a Formula One race so far, like to this day. Or I think it was a version of a race because it was a shorter race, I believe. I don't know. What I wasn't even born, so. Um, but after Lela, there were three other drivers. So I think in total there were five. The thing that kind of like stood out to me the most is that when I look at all their stats, their F1 trajectory, it hasn't been long. They didn't race for long. And they had entries to races, but they sadly didn't qualify for the actual race, which made me wonder, what were the barriers that they faced back then? And are these barriers still the same barriers that females in motorsport face today? So, we asked our followers on Instagram why they think that we haven't seen a female Formula One racing driver on the grid recently. The comment that stood out said, few people make it to F1, like 95% of them are men, and even from those men, 0.1% make it to F1. I can definitely agree with that for the simple fact that F1 is a very coveted and exclusive sport. I mean, we always say, oh, we have the 20 of the best drivers on the grid. As of next year, is going to be 22. But when you look at the amount of aspiring drivers that are aiming for that seat, that single seater, it's an extremely limited amount of seats. And when I look at also the drivers who are in the feeder series and the development series as of current, they're mostly males. So it makes it extremely hard for a woman to kind of like break through. And of course, the barriers are much more complicated than I can dissect in this short amount of time. But personally, I think there's definitely some structural, financial, and cultural barriers. Put an accent on the financial part because F1 is expensive. When I saw like the aspiring drivers, how they start early with karting and then and when they want to advance to a higher level racing in feeder series, they aren't getting paid, but they're the ones actually paying the teams to race. It's a financial burden on families. Like I read about parents, sacrificing everything, basically an arm and a leg to get their child through karting and also feeder series until they get some sort of financial backing. So it's a burden and it's also a gamble because you will either make it or you won't. And add that to that financial burden. On top of that, add the fact that there's a cultural barrier where females aren't necessarily incentivized to race just because it's not a feminine activity. It makes the pipeline for women in Formula One or in motorsport like even narrower. So honestly, I hope we can see a Formula One driver sometime soon. I honestly think it's gonna happen, but not in the next 2 years, for example. It's gonna take time. We actually took a poll on that as well, and asked if how long people think it's gonna take before we see an F1 female driver, a female F1 driver on the grid, and a lot of people agreed that it's gonna take more than 10 years. That's a decade. And I would say that's a realistic timeline, not because I want to be pessimistic, but because I think a lot needs to happen before you get to Formula One. There's a whole trajectory. You start, like I said, from karting to feeder series. There's a foundation that needs to be built, and sometimes you don't even make it to Formula One. There's a lot of luck that is involved in getting that seat. Like, literally, when I read some stories, it's like every star in a driver's universe needs to align for them to get that seat in Formula One. So yeah, it needs to start with the foundation. And now there are a lot of organizations and a lot of projects like the F1 Academy that is kind of like is great at building this sort of momentum for young female drivers and giving them a platform to develop this foundation. I had the pleasure to speak with, like I said, one of the F1 Academy drivers, with Chloe Chambers. She has raced in multiple racing series and she's now in the F1 Academy. This is her second year and she's currently fighting for the F1 Academy championship. I spoke to her about, Chloe. I got to know her as a driver, the pressures she sometimes faces, how she sees her fight for the championship. And we also even talked about the prospects of seeing a female in motorsport. So I hope you can get some insights from this interview and just get to know Chloe as, essentially like a female in motorsport. She's writing her story, and F1 Academy is part of that story. Ultimately, she is working towards what we want, which is to see more females in this industry, and she's doing a great job at that. So I hope you enjoy this interview, and I'll see you on the other side. Right. So I hope you enjoyed the interview with Chloe Chambers, and we'll be reading your comments below. Let us know when you think we're gonna see, yeah, a female Formula One driver on the grid. Whether that's 10 years from now, 5 years from now. We want to hear from you, and also what you thought of Chloe Chambers and who you think we should interview next. Put that all down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Formula World Project's channels. See you soon. Welcome to the Fans Fit Wall. I'm here with Chloe Chambers, current F1 Academy driver for Campus Racing, backed by Red Bull Ford. Chloe, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It was nice to, I was certainly excited when I heard that we got you to interview.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious about the new program that you guys were having, so yeah, of course I said yes.
Well, hopefully when you watch it, it's as exciting as it might come off now. Um, but I have to kind of like start off with congratulating you on your win in Canada. Um,
Thank you. Yeah.
certainly it didn't. I feel like everything was working to, your weekend seemed like the weekend was gonna come to you. Um, because you started on pole position for the races. And then in race one and race two, unfortunately, for things outside of your control, you couldn't get or maximize how you wanted to. But then you still managed to grab that win. How did it feel after those two races to get the third win?
Yeah, I mean, the weekend started off pretty well with qualifying, of course. Obviously, since one of the races was the Miami rescheduled race, I already knew that I was going to be starting on pole for one of the races, so to be able to bring that same pace to Montreal was a good feeling heading into the weekend. Unfortunately, Saturday wasn't the best day
Yeah.
on track, but I think, we learned a lot from that day and were able to bounce back on the Sunday, and then we're able to leave the weekend on a high.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it was your birthday weekend as well. So I was certainly happy when you got that win. How did you celebrate it?
I didn't really do too much celebrating actually. I left pretty early on Sunday to go home. It's only an hour and a half flight for me, so
Oh,
it's
yeah.
actually one of the shorter travels this whole year. So it was nice for me to just be able to go straight back home and make it home for dinner time, basically. Um, so I didn't do too much celebrating, but I enjoyed my weekend. I enjoyed my birthday. I think all the fans, the fan perception at Montreal was probably the biggest that I've seen in F1 Academy in my time in the series. So it was really good to see just so many fans there supporting us. Our
Yeah,
paddock was like a mile away from everything, so to see everybody show up and make the trek out to our paddock to come see us was
yeah.
really cool to see, and I think they made that weekend extra special.
Oh, that's nice. I'm very happy for you. You may have noticed that I did not introduce you. Just because, I had like all this summary, like when people do like those really cool introductions, like with 10 seconds, they kind of like summarize all your achievements and the racing series you've been in. But then I thought, maybe Chloe wants to introduce herself. Maybe there's something that people don't know that you want them to know. So can you tell us who is Chloe Chambers?
Well, I am now newly 21 years old. I am in my second year in F1 Academy racing with the Red Bull Ford Academy program operated by Campos Racing. This is, yeah, my second and final year in F1 Academy. So after this, I'll have to find new places to go and race at. I'm also managed by 14 Management, which is Fernando Alonso's management. So a lot of connections through there. I've been racing now for I think this is my 12th year racing in total. So I grew up the majority of my career racing throughout North America, so mainly the US and Canada.
Yeah,
And then I've done some other series in the US in cars. So I've raced in the Porsche Sprint Challenge, I've raced in Mustang Challenge, F4 in the US. I did W Series as well for the last year, and then yeah, now in F1 Academy.
yeah, you got some pretty cool feats, and we'll certainly like talk more about that because that's also very exciting. But before we do that, there's kind of like one thing I wanted to address with you because you're now a Netflix star. There was the release of F1, the Academy, and I think that's certainly like a good thing for exposure. Like when I think Netflix, I just think big. How did you even like? How did you find out that you were going to be in this Netflix series in the first place?
Well, so they started filming with us for the Netflix series last year.
Mhm.
So um, I I mean I was in my first year in F1 Academy, so I was pretty new to it all. Obviously, like being on Netflix is really cool, and being one of the like main faces, I would say, in a series is really cool. So I was super excited. Obviously, like we didn't really know how it would turn out, but after having watched it and, seeing how they've put the premieres on and like all the effort that went into it, I couldn't be happier. I think they did a very good job with how they
Yeah,
portrayed everything. They kept it all pretty close to reality, I would say. I mean, obviously, it's hard for me to say about other drivers and kind of what they went through, but from my side, at least, from the parts that I was in, I think it was all very accurate. I feel like they did me justice, so
right.
I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, that's nice that you actually point that out because, like, for instance, like with Drive to Survive, you had like some scenes that the people are saying aren't necessarily accurate and stuff like that. So the depiction
was, I think, a very important thing. And that was one of the questions that I had for you as well. So to hear that you feel yourself, that you were portrayed, yeah, they just saw you. I think it's very nice and very important as well. And when I think of F1 the Academy, I also think of Drive to Survive, just because Drive to Survive kind of like brought a huge flux of new fans to the sport. And I feel like maybe this Netflix series for F1 The Academy might have had the same effect. But I want to hear from you as someone who's been in it. Is there a before and after F1 Academy?
Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd hope that the Netflix series is able to do the same thing as Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more difficult for the producers of F1 The Academy because
Hmm.
when they started in Drive to Survive, there were already existing storylines to go off of from the beginning. For us, first of all, there's a 2-year limit on the series. So you can't really have those like decades long of history between drivers and drivers' families and teams and everything. You kind of have to build something new every year when the second year drivers leave. There's going to be drivers that take their spot, and then you'll have to figure out their storylines and come up with that. So I think it's actually more difficult for us to get that same effect. But I think from at least what I heard in Montreal
Hmm.
from all the fans and everything, they seem to have really enjoyed it. And um, I hope that the extra fan support in Montreal was partly due to the Netflix series, because I think that if it continues to grow in that way, F1 Academy will just skyrocket in viewership and support.
Yeah, that's also like because I think now maybe people recognize you more now on the street.
Honestly, like no. Um, I um I kind of like it that way at the same time.
Hmm.
It was funny because on my flight to Montreal, I flew out a day earlier than my dad did, and I was on a flight with a bunch of like Formula One fans. You know, they had all their Formula One merch on and
Right.
hats and everything. And I was carrying my helmet bag as well. So I didn't get recognized by a single person, not a question, nothing. But my dad actually, who flew the next day,
Yeah.
got recognized by somebody,
Whoa.
which I
That
think
also
is
got
so funny.
Oh, nice. So that also got a little bit of popularity going on.
Yeah, I think my dad got more popularity than I did.
Well, I guess maybe I'll brush up on you as well later on. But is there like I need to know, is there a memorable fan experience before or after this whole thing?
I mean, I think definitely one that stands out to me is was in Zandvoort last year. I got the opportunity to go to the fan zone and just seeing everybody in the crowd. I think I have like a picture that I posted of like me standing in front of everybody. And normally, like, when the F1 Academy drivers and support series drivers go to the fan zone, it's not nearly as big as when the F1 drivers are
Right.
there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember it being just filled with people. And like not only that, but people had signs like just for F1 Academy, which earlier in the year last year and um in like W series beforehand as well, you would never really see as much support directly for F1 Academy. Most of it would
Right.
be like fans who just happened to be there kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that was one that really stood out.
Nice. Yeah, I was there as well, and to see because I also expected there not to be a lot of people, but to see that you guys also were so welcomed and people were actually waiting for autographs to talk to you, and to just show their support, it was truly beautiful, and it kind of like makes me feel hopeful that there's much much more to come from F1 Academy. So hopefully that materializes.
Yes.
But we talked about, the latest with the Netflix series and everything, but I think now I want to shift the focus towards Chloe, the driver. I think, like you said, you've been in multiple racing series. You've been a woman of many firsts. You had the Porsche Guinness World Record. You were the first female pole sitter um, in the Toyota Racing Series, and so I I consider you a woman of a lot of firsts, and that's definitely inspiring um, in this series and as a female. Um, and at this point, you've been racing for more than a decade. Uh, that's half your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's over half my life now, actually. So, yeah, I've been racing for a long time now. I've had a lot of experience now.
Yeah.
Um, I think, you know, I think a lot of it is good experiences.
Hmm.
But I would say like it's a 50-50 split of positive experiences and then some tougher experiences. But I always said that the tougher times I think are where you learn the most.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it feels good to be winning everything and doing well and just having a good season, but I think where you learn the most is in those tougher times, which obviously after 12 years now, I've had quite a few. So, and I'm sure so have many other drivers.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a thing. To be a driver, I admire you guys so much because the amount of resilience that you have to have, and to kind of like come off of a weekend that maybe didn't go as expected, and then you're expected to maybe the following week or whatever time it may be, whatever time frame in between, you're expected to come back and perform. That's very admirable. But with that being said, do you have like um any moment where you just sit and let it sink in that you did all of these things?
Um, every so often I do. I mean, not as often as I think people would think. Because I mean, especially now in F1 Academy, our season is just nonstop all year. The first little bit of the season from like beginning of February until basically Miami, it was something every 2 weeks basically. So usually the week before everything, you'll go to the workshop and go on the sim. So basically I was busy every single week
Yeah.
for like 3 months. Um
Yeah.
so it's been tough this year to really kind of figure out and like think about everything that's happened,
Mhm.
but I always am appreciative of all the opportunities that I've had, and um, I think my parents are a big part in helping me kind of like realize that sometimes because I'm always just so focused on whatever the next thing is and kind of just staying in the present moment. Um, but yeah, I think when
Yeah.
I do kind of take that time to look back, it's definitely a little bit of a um just like, surreal moment, I'd say.
Yeah, because yeah, there's a lot, and I think also maybe it's a very pressured environment that you're expected to kind of like perform all the time, and just to sit still, like you said, you don't have a lot of time. You didn't have a lot of time to sit still and kind of like reflect on this moment. So to let it sink in and just realize, I think what you've accomplished is, I think that would be a bit overwhelming as well sometimes, or
Yes, sometimes it can be. I try not to do a whole lot during the season just because then, I think it kind of would affect my focus a little bit because there's just so much that's happened in the last 12 years, but um I think it is good kind of between seasons to take a little bit of time and like reflect on everything.
yeah. Well, this, and I think one of the features, I think, I don't know, you can say if it's a highlight of your career or not, but this is your second year in F1 Academy. And we know that, 2 years is the maximum that you can do. And I think uh, F1, the first year is more like a foundational year where you kind of like learn the basics of the car or how to handle the car. And I think you take a lot of learnings from that into the next year. So, seeing that this is your second year, what is it that you learned in 2024 that you took over with you in 2025?
I think last year was probably one of the best years in terms of my development as a driver. And I think that in just kind of, just understanding the car, understanding the tires, and understanding the tracks a little bit more. I think that's been the biggest difference between last year and this year. And I think it's it's pretty easy to see when we go to new circuits. So, um, I mean, kind of the rawest example was Montreal because we had no testing there. We had one FP and then straight into qualifying. And I think that was a good point to kind of showcase my growth from last year because I was able to kind of adapt to the track and everything really quickly. So I think that being able to work with the same team as well, it was really nice for me. It just made my life so much easier. And then of course, yeah, the support from Red Bull and everyone has been really nice this year. We have access to the Red Bull F1 simulator at the factory in Milton Keynes, so um, I make more use of it when we go to new tracks.
Right.
But I think that's a very big help because, I mean, it's top of the line kind of simulator work and the track models especially are the kind of biggest difference
Yeah.
between what you can get in an F1 sim or somewhere else basically. It's unmatched. So
Yeah.
um I just feel way more comfortable this season. I feel like in a way lower stress than last year
Really?
because I feel like I don't have to like think about everything for myself. All I have to do is show up to the racetrack and focus on driving basically. Everything else is pretty much handled for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big positive change for this year.
Yeah, that's nice to also hear that you don't experience or experience less pressure actually than you did last year. Um, and I have to go back for a second when you said you're using Red Bull's sim. How did it feel the first time you stepped into that? Because you said it was top of the line. I imagined it's like the highest, best tech out there. How did it
Yeah.
feel?
I mean, it was definitely very different to anything else, any other sim I've driven. So, yeah, I mean, I am somebody who doesn't really actually like enjoy the sim as much as other drivers. Like I know a lot of other drivers will just pound out laps and laps and laps and laps
Hmm.
on the sim and just like love it every time. Um, I enjoy driving in the actual physical car more, which I think most drivers would, but I mean, you'd be surprised sometimes. Um, but when you have a simulator that feels so much like the real car, then you can start to enjoy it a little more. And I think that's something that's changed with being able to go to the sim at Red Bull. I've just kind of enjoyed my time there a little more and from that have been able to use the time more efficiently.
Right. And so would you say that made you, you said more efficiently, but would you say that made you maybe a lot more confident as well on track when you go out there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially in Montreal because we didn't get any testing time beforehand. We had limited reference data because we only had F1 to look at really. Um, Being able to go and drive the sim and see the track basically in as realistic state as you would in real life,
Yeah.
I think that was a big help and it definitely put me on the right track heading into the weekend. And it also it's nice because all three of us under Campus Racing are under the Red Bull Academy program, so we all have access to the sim and so we can see each other's reference data and kind of just build upon each other. And then I think that translated very well into the weekend. Of course, we were all very quick during the weekend. I think some little parts of bad luck here and there for
Mhm.
some of us, but I think it showed what we were capable of. I think
Yeah.
next time we just have to go out and execute it.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's nice to have that kind of like experience and just to race in the sim and you all have that resource, let's say, to use, and then you're more confident on track. That already, it makes up a great deal of it. And so I wanted to ask you, Obviously you had this big change from Haas to Red Bull Ford. And like, of course, Red Bull is like a big team. And you know how they say with great power comes great responsibility. Uh, I was thinking if, because you mentioned as well that you experienced less pressure compared to the year before. But do you experience pressure just from switching from being Haas-backed to Red Bull?
I think actually kind of the expectations for all the teams has increased a bit since last year. Last year was the first year where all the F1 teams were involved directly with F1 academies. So I think the teams didn't really know what to expect, to be
Mhm.
honest, last year. So they were kind of just happy with whatever. Um, I think this year for all the teams, the stakes are a little bit higher because now they know what to expect. They know what kind of competition there is in the series and that it really does matter a lot how your drivers are performing.
Yeah,
So I think there's a little bit of added pressure from that, but also because it's my second year, this is my last opportunity to go and win the championship. So I kind of have that pressure from myself. And I think that's where I think most of the pressure is this year.
yeah,
It's not necessarily from Red Bull or from Campos or whatever. I think it's more so from myself, knowing that it's my second year and my last chance to win the championship.
yeah. And how do you deal with that pressure? What do you do to kind of like relieve some of it?
I think I actually keep a pretty good balance of how much pressure I put on myself because I think I don't ever feel like there is ever too much on me. Um, I think that kind of I don't really ever feel like I have to find a way to release the pressure, so to say. Um, I think I kind of naturally just know the kind of level that I work best at, and I try to keep it there. But I think it's easy because my job at the racetrack is just to go and maximize my on-track performance, basically. I mean, obviously Thursday's a little bit different. Thursday's where I get all the media out of the way, and then I have less to do during the actual
Yeah,
driving part of the weekend. So I think, yeah, I mean, for me, it's not too consuming with all the pressure.
yeah. Would you say that that's the least enjoyable? Thursdays are the least enjoyable for you as well? I think I've heard that from a lot of times.
I actually wouldn't say, I mean, okay, I guess compared to the days where we're driving, they're
Yeah.
probably the least enjoyable, but I don't not enjoy them.
Hmm.
I actually enjoy Thursdays. It's a nice day of like kind of relaxing, so to say. I think a lot of the media things that we do on Thursday are actually pretty fun, so I enjoy them. And it's like a time where you're not driving on track, so you can all talk to each other and not, have things on in the back of your mind about what happened on track or performance or anything. So I am one of the rare few that enjoy Thursdays.
Wow, it seems like you're having a blast all weekends.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a big part of it for me is just having fun.
Yeah. And I think it's good that you're having fun. And like, I think also like a part of racing is, being able to enjoy what you do, because I think it to some extent, maybe that also kind of like affects your performance, or am I wrong?
I mean, yeah, of course, for me, like enjoying what you're doing and is like one of the big things
Hmm.
for having a successful career and um to maximize performance. I think just enjoying it is a big part. I think if you enjoy it, you'll then want to kind of improve and get better results or continue on with the same results or whatever it may be, just because you're enjoying it. And then, of course, who doesn't love winning? So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And then how do you reflect on this season compared to the last? Anything you think that you could have done better so far?
I mean, I think so far this season everything has gone as we've wanted, bar a couple of little things here and there, but I think that we're still in the championship fight. Everything is still super close at the top, and I've really enjoyed the reverse grid races coming back. Um, I think that those make the racing more exciting. I think it makes it so that the drivers who are at the top of the championship have to not only be fast and just win races, but also be able to overtake and have good racecraft and be smart. And I think that's a big part of the championship this year, and like kind of how it's evolving is are the inclusion of the reverse grid races, and just kind of having to keep up that consistency throughout the year.
Yeah, that's nice. And that's also nice that you mentioned the reverse grid races because I can tell you that's controversial in the fan race because a lot of people also don't necessarily, they're not a fan of the reverse grid. But I have to say, I absolutely love it. The amount of action that you get to see because of the reverse grid is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone very well so far during the year. I remember Jeddah last year was a relatively difficult track to overtake at. So I was very curious to see how it would do in the reverse grid race. And I will say it added something to that weekend because I think something that a lot of the fans didn't enjoy about last year is that it was so hard to overtake at some tracks. But I think this year, now with the reverse grid races, it kind of adds at least one race of excitement for the weekend. Um, but I think overall, all the racing this year has been super exciting, whether it's reverse grid or the main race or even qualifyings have been very exciting. It's been very up and down during qualifying. So I think this year overall, it's just everyone is a little bit closer and especially up at the top, I would say in the top five or so. It's been very close, and I think it'll be a battle to the end, really, for the championship. I don't think it'll be a season where you know the champion
Yeah.
a couple of races ahead of the end of the season.
Yeah. And that's honestly what I'm more excited about. I'm hoping you can come out on the top of it. I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
But there's one other question I want to veer back to you. What is the quality that you stand out for? What makes you so special as a driver on the racing track? What's something that you think maybe other people don't have?
I think for me, it's just my ability to learn after each session on track and then apply what I've learned into the next session or even lap to lap, I would say corner to corner. There's things to learn every time you go through a corner, every time you complete a lap, and then you can carry that into the next lap and make the next lap even better. And I think that's one of the things that I've always been very good at, especially when I started out karting and learning the fundamentals. I was always very quick at taking that feedback and then improving on it next time on track.
That's nice. And I think also like a lot of racing comes from like self-belief and a bit of confidence. And I heard a lot of drivers say you have to kind of like believe that you're the best to beat the rest kind of mentality. Would you say that when you step in the car, that's what you're thinking of?
I mean, yeah, I think that if you don't believe it yourself, nobody else will. So you have to be able to believe that you at the very least have the potential to be the best. I think if you think, "Oh, I'm okay with finishing 10th or whatever it may be," if it's not winning, then I think your chances of winning go down just by believing that because it kind of allows a little bit of complacency, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point you make. And I have to kind of like, address kind of like the elephant in the room as well. I feel like every time we talk about like F1 Academy or you as a person, there's like this element of you being a female in the motorsport industry. Um, there are like, of course, with F1 Academy, there's a new platform for people, but there's also a lot of people who are skeptical about, ever seeing a female Formula One racing driver in the near future. What's your opinion on that?
I think that there will be a female Formula One driver in the future. Definitely not immediately, of course. F1 Academy is only in its third season, so you have to remember how early it is in the kind of journey to finding the first full-time female Formula One driver. I think a lot of people expected that especially with the name being F1 Academy, people didn't
Mhm.
really look into what the series actually is, and they just assumed, oh, it's just girls driving Formula One cars around, and then they'll put one in Formula One in like a year.
Right. Yeah.
Um, I think that's the wrong kind of perception of the series, and I think the series has really tried to like state their goals very clearly, but I mean, it's hard sometimes for the more, I would say, casual fan to really understand because you do kind of have to read into it a lot and do a lot of your own research to figure out what it's all about. But I think that there is definitely going to be a female Formula One driver in the future.
Yeah.
How long from now? I don't know, but this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It wasn't ever meant to be. So
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of people have to understand.
Yeah, exactly. I think also like I couldn't say maybe in 5 years or 10 years or whatever time stamp we can put on it. It's just the fact that we're working towards having a female on the F1 grid. That is the exciting thing. But this is, like you said, your last year with Formula One, F1 Academy. Um, how are you navigating that?
I am just trying to make the most out of my year. Obviously trying to get the best results I can on track, but also trying to build those relationships off track and um, generally just enjoy the year. It
Yeah,
goes by very quickly. I think that's what I told my teammates because both of my teammates are rookies this year. I
yeah,
told them that it goes by very quickly. So really enjoy it. Take the time to do your best and maximize your potential because in the end, you don't want to leave with any regrets.
yeah. That's really good. And I think then looking back, I think we kind of like went over it a little bit, but then looking back, like what's one thing you remember from this season? It's not over yet, but so far.
Obviously, I think the most memorable thing from this year so far has been my first win of the season in Montreal on Sunday. Um, I think that weekend as a whole is one to remember. Of course, for some good reasons, but also for some not so good reasons. But again, I think that those were some of the biggest times of growth this year that I've had. So, hopefully I'm able to carry that into our next round in Zandvoort and come back
Yeah,
fighting for the championship.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. You're fighting for the championship. So how are you gonna approach the next? Because you have 6 races left over the rest of the season. How are you approaching potentially fighting for the championship?
I mean, for me, it's just about staying consistent, trying to not sacrifice points
Hmm.
where I can, and I think that in the end, come our last round in Vegas, I should be right back there, pretty close in points with the opportunity to win the championship in the last round. I don't think it'll be possible to win it before the last round. I think that would be very difficult for anybody to do at this point. Um, so I think for now it's just trying to stay consistent, try to, brush things off that happen that were out of my control and continue
Hmm.
moving forward.
Yes. Okay. Well, to finalize this interview, I'm gonna ask you like some quick questions, and then I won't tell you what it is for yet, but you just have to make a choice between this or that. Is that good?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wet or dry?
Dry.
Dry. Oversteer or understeer?
Um, Understeer.
Aw. Night or day race?
Night race.
Whoa. Iconic F1 specific circuit.
Um, well, there's one that I haven't driven that I would like to. I would say Spa.
Oh yeah, Spa's a nice one, honestly, with the um hill. Super. Pole position or back on the grid?
Pole position.
Wow. Why pole position? I think I heard as well, a lot of people say they also like starting from the back of the grid, which was surprising.
In certain situations, it's okay to start at the back. I think, of course, if you're in the fight for a championship, you would not want to start at the back.
Right.
Um, But if, say, it's your first year in F1 Academy, something happens out of your control and you're starting at the back, it's super low stress and easy, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, this was basically for our socials, and we're gonna ask our audience to kind of like choose and guess what you chose. So I think you can see it on there. But for now, it was really, really nice having you. I wish you the best of luck, and like I said, I'm rooting for you, and hopefully you manage to grab that championship. But I'll be in Zandvoort as well, so I'll be looking forward to seeing you race.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chloe.
All right.